Good evening, all. In the first module, we shall continue with nuclear power plant. In a nuclear power plant, we are using nuclear fuel for producing heat energy. So, nuclear power plant resembles to a thermal power plant. Here, we are boiling the water and converting that to steam, and that is being utilized to drive a turbine and hence a generator. The heat produced is by means of nuclear reaction. So we need a nuclear fuel. So nuclear fuel is any material that can be consumed to derive nuclear energy. The most common type of nuclear fuel is the fissionable elements that can be made to undergo nuclear fission chain reactions in a nuclear reactor. The most common type of nuclear fuels are uranium-235 and plutonium-239. Nuclear fission. When a neutron strikes an atom of uranium, the uranium splits into two lighter atoms and releases heat simultaneously. So nuclear fuels are used for production of heat energy by means of a process called nuclear fission. So fission is an exothermic reaction, that is a heat liberating process. Along with the heat generated, there will be some neutrons liberated and some fragments will be liberated, and enormous amount of radiations also will be emitted due to this process. Now consider a free neutron is striking a uranium-235 atom, which is the fuel. The nucleus of uranium-235 absorbs that neutron and becomes uranium-236. It is highly unstable, so that it will readily split into barium and krypton. Along with that, neutrons are on an average 2 to 3 neutrons are liberated from each fission process, and heat energy also will be liberated. So consider uranium atom, which is being collided by neutron, free neutron. They split into barium and krypton, and heat is also being liberated. On an average, 2 to 3 neutrons are liberated, and these neutrons are also fast moving. They have got high kinetic energy. They are capable of producing further fission in other uranium-235 atoms. Nuclear chain reactions. A chain reaction refers to a process in which neutrons liberated in each fission produce an additional fission in at least one further nucleus. This nucleus in turn produces neutrons and the process repeats. The process is controlled. It is used for nuclear power generation, or if it proceeds in an uncontrollable way, it is used for nuclear weapons. So each step of fission can be grouped into first generation, second generation, third generation, etc. After fourth generation, we will be obtaining 8 such neutrons. They are capable of producing further fission. This continues as a chain reaction, hence the name nuclear chain reaction. This is the balance expression for this. Uranium-235 being collided by a neutron, it gets absorbed and it becomes uranium-235 becomes uranium-236. It is highly unstable, so it is split into barium and krypton. Then 2 to free neutrons are liberated along with heat energy. In each nucleus, if each nucleus releases 2 or more neutrons, then the number of fissions doubles in each generation. In that case, in 10 generations, there are 1024 fissions, and in 80 generations, about 6 into 10 raised to 23 fissions. The features of nuclear energy: it does not depend on seasonal variations. Adequate supply of water is only required. Then transportation cost is less. We need only a very small amount of fuel, so the transportation cost involved is less. Partially independent of geographical factors. In the case of hydroelectric power plant, we need head of water and all. That is not required in this case. But radioactive waste management is one of the main problems faced by nuclear power plants. Then large amount of power is released with the consumption of only a small amount of fuel. Now the factors to be considered for the site selection of nuclear power plant. Availability of water. We need water for converting that to steam and driving the turbine. So adequate supply of water should be there. Distance from load centers. Nuclear power plant cannot be located near a populated area or an industrial area. So there is a distance to be maintained from load centers. Distance from populated areas, that is also considered as load centers. And accessibility to site. In order to construct as well as operate the power plant, in order to transport the fuel, we need some transportation facility. There should be some access to the site. Nuclear waste disposal is one of the main problems associated with nuclear power stations. So there must be safe, sufficient means for waste disposal. Then safety against earthquakes, etc. The plant should be free from natural calamities. So safety against earthquake and similar landslide, etc. should be there. Then working principle. Nuclear power plant resembles to a conventional thermal power plant because large amount of heat is released due to fission chain reactions in the reactor vessel that is utilized to produce steam and to drive a turbine and hence a generator to generate electricity. So it resembles to a thermal power plant in working. Only difference is how the heat is being generated. If it is a thermal power plant, it is by burning the coal. In the case of nuclear power plant, it is the nuclear reaction which produces heat energy. In parts, the main part of a nuclear power plant is the reactor vessel or nuclear reactor. A reactor is a device in which nuclear chain reactions are initiated, that means started, then controlled and sustained at a steady rate. It includes fuel rods, control rods, moderator, coolant, necessary shielding and safety measures. This is the structure of a nuclear vessel, nuclear reactor vessel. Now this is the structure of a reactor. There will be a shielding at the outermost portion. Then inside which this red colored is the nuclear fuel. Then control rods are there. They are accessible from outside. Then moderator is being provided inside the chamber. Then there is a coolant circulation in order to collect the heat from the reactor vessel. Fuel should be a fissionable material and produce fission chain reaction. It can be uranium-235, uranium-238 or plutonium-239. The fuel should be protected from corrosion. Due to the extreme conditions inside the nuclear reactor, there may be a chance that the fuel may get corroded. So the fuel should be protected from corrosion. should be able to withstand the high temperature within the reactor. So this is the fuel rod assembly. The uranium, suppose it is the uranium, it will be first manufactured in this or formed into a pellet shape. Then pellets are arranged in this way and they are arranged inside a rod, metal rod. Then number of metal rods are assembled like this to form a fuel assembly. After that, it is placed inside the reactor vessel. Then the control rods. Other than fuel rods, the next part is the control rod. Fast moving neutrons inside the reactor vessel, which are the product of fission chain reaction, may lead to an uncontrolled chain reaction and further to an explosion. So, fast moving neutrons, if they are not controlled, they can lead to uncontrolled chain reaction and further to an explosion. Control rods are used to control fission by absorbing neutrons. If there are excess neutrons, it will be absorbed by the control rods and chain reaction will be maintained in a sustainable rate. The control rod is a cylindrical or sheet form structure. It can be moved in and out of the reactor vessel from outside. Insertion absorbs more neutrons and hence damps out the reaction. Withdrawal of the control rods can speed up the reaction as the absorption of neutrons is less at this condition. So by inserting the control rods, we can absorb more neutrons, and by withdrawing the control rods, neutrons absorbed will be less and reaction speed up. Materials used as control rods are boron and cadmium. Control rods should be stable under heat and radiation. It should be corrosion resistant, strong enough to shut down the reactor instantly under all conditions. It should have sufficient cross-sectional area to absorb the neutrons. Picture shows the control rod assembly on a reactor vessel. The first picture shows that the control rods are fully inserted into the fuel section so that the neutrons are absorbed by the control rods. In the second picture, you can see the control rods are withdrawn from the reactor vessel, so neutron economy will be improved in this case. Moderator. The neutrons produced in a chain reaction are fast moving. They have got high kinetic energy. So they may try to escape from the reactor vessel due to their high kinetic energy. To improve their utilization, their speed is to be reduced. In order to control the speed of neutrons, moderators are used. For this, the neutrons are allowed to collide with the moderator and will get scattered after each collision. Collision results in loss of energy and the speed of neutron is being reduced. The slow neutrons are easily captured by the fuel. Materials used for moderator are graphite, heavy water, beryllium, etc. They should be corrosion resistant and stable like fuel rods as well as control rods. Here we are having H2O moderator in this chamber. Then reflector. To reflect back the neutrons that are trying to escape from the reactor and hence to improve the neutron economy of the reactor, we are using reflectors. It is made of graphite and beryllium. Reactor vessel, it is a strong walled container housing the core. It contains moderator, reflector, thermal shielding, control rods, fuel rods, etc. Then biological shielding. For shielding the radioactive zones from the possible radiation hazard is essential to protect the operating person from harmful effects of radiation. Thick layers of lead or concrete are provided to block gamma rays. Thick layers of metal or plastic are sufficient to stop beta and alpha particles. Then heat exchanger. Outside the reactor vessel, the next part of a power plant. Nuclear power plant is the heat exchanger or steam generator. This is the part where steam is generated using the heat transferred from the reactor. The heat transfer is done by the coolant circulated through the reactor and the heat exchanger. So, when the coolant circulates inside the reactor vessel, it captures the heat and brings it out. When it passes through the heat exchanger where water is being kept, the coolant transfers the heat collected to the water kept in the heat exchanger so that the water is converted to steam. And coolant, it is circulated through and around the reactor core to collect the heat generated. If it is water, it takes heat and gets converted readily to steam and it can be directly sent to the turbine. The coolant should not, otherwise we can use heavy water, molten sodium, etc. as coolant. Coolant should not corrode the material that comes in contact. It should be stable under high temperature conditions. Then it should have high heat transfer coefficient. Then the radioactivity induced in the coolant should be nil. The power required for pumping the coolant should be minimum. Then coolants are water, normal water or heavy water, gas like air, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, helium, or molten sodium, molten salt, etc. Then steam and condenser circuit. Steam turbine or the turbine used to drive the generator. So steam from the boiler is fed to steam turbine or steam generator. Steam from the steam generator is supplied to the steam turbine. Then turbine drives the electric generator using high pressure steam. And condenser, steam after work from the turbine is passed through the condenser for condensation. And the steam is cooled with the help of cooling towers as in the case of thermal power plants. The water is pumped back to steam generator with the help of various pumps. Generator is an alternating current generator for electric power generation. That is alternators. Steam turbines rotate at high speeds, typically 3000 rpm, and hence the AC generator coupled with it shall be suitable for high speed operation. So this is the simple working diagram of a nuclear power station. The heat liberated due to nuclear fission is utilized to produce steam. Steam is utilized in a turbine to drive a generator. This is an animation for that. Here is the reactor vessel. The coolant is circulated between the steam generator and the reactor vessel. The coolant, the collected heat is transferred from the coolant to the water kept in this steam generator. So water is converted to steam and goes to the turbine. Turbine is getting rotated and it is connected to the generator by means of a shaft. So when the generator rotates, electricity is being produced. Steam after use from the turbine goes to the condenser. Condensed water is pumped back to the steam generator. This is a diagram, block diagram that shows the reactor vessel, its parts, then rest of the power plant equipments. So we are having an outer cover. This is the reactor vessel, inside which we are having the fuel rods, then control rods, moderator, reflector, concrete shielding, etc. Then coolant is circulated throughout the reactor vessel and the steam generator. Hot coolant is passed through the steam generator. After transferring the heat, it is pumped back to the reactor vessel. Then steam generator, steam goes to the turbine, drives the generator, steam after use goes to the condenser, condensed water goes back to the steam generator. This diagram you can easily draw. Then advantages of this nuclear power station are area requirement is less. It is less polluting compared to thermal power plants. Then large capacity plants are possible because the fuel requirement is less. The quantity of fuel involved is less. Power generation is independent of weather conditions. Disadvantages are it has got high initial investment, then requires high technical knowledge for installation and operation. It has got a risk of radiation hazard. The fuel is expensive and also a scarce resource. Its supply is estimated to last only for next 30 to 60 years depending on the actual demand. Disposal of radioactive waste is difficult. Then these are the main advantages as well as disadvantages of nuclear power plant. We have seen the block diagram, various parts, working, etc. The next class, we shall see the classification of reactors because it is also included in your syllabus. We shall see classification of reactors in the next class. Thank you very much for listening.